Welcome to this episode of the Harpreet Singh Show. I'm your host Harpreet Singh from Surrey, British Columbia, Canada. In today's program, Dr. Arun Garg will be my co-host and we're going to talk to a very special guest, Dr. Jagessar Das. He's just 91 years young, but he vibrates with energy. He has written a lot of books. He's a follower of Kabirji and he thoroughly believes in integrative approach in medicine. So what better way than to get Dr. Arun Garg on board and let him introduce our special guest for today. And henceforth, we'll continue with the discussion. So Dr. Arun Garg and Dr. Das, good evening. Welcome to the program.
Good
Thank
evening,
you.
good evening, Harpreet Singh ji. So nice to be again with you.
Welcome,
And
sir.
as you rightly said, we have a very special friend and a colleague, and someone who has dedicated his life to practicing what we have been calling integrative health, integrative medicine, and incorporating this. So I thought it will be so good to have him with us and share with our viewers his life journey, his work, and the go. So Dr. Das, introduction. I thought I just finished reading his book. Um, he calls it "Doctor by Chance, Mystic by Choice." And that says it all about him. And his introduction, I'm going to borrow from that book. An introduction was written by Dr. Hurt, a founding president of Global Peace Alliance. And he describes Dr. Das as a son of indentured labor in Guyana, uh, in Latin America. His pursuit of knowledge saw him become a goldsmith and a tailor. By chance, he attended secondary school. By chance, he attended secondary school, and we'll talk about it, what that chance was. By chance, he attended secondary school and the university, and graduating as a medical doctor from University of British Columbia in early days of British UBC Medical School. I believe it was in 1961 he graduated. He attended to his patients' physical, mental, and spiritual needs, and his prescription for happiness in general would be helpful to all people. And that's why we thought we should connect with him and follow up. His interest in religion and spirituality saw him write many books, give lectures, and produce TV programs, teach meditation, and participate in religious organization. Dr. Das' work shows what integrated holistic life can be. So warm welcome, Dr. Das, and we're looking forward for our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
sir, for your time. And as Dr. Garg has mentioned, I had the honor of, we even talked about the books and we have talked a lot about Kabirji in our programs. So, Dr. Das, if you could just take us a little bit back towards that time when you were even not going into school, but here you are, a practicing doctor for over 5 decades and 91 years young. So, how did this journey happen and how did you get attracted towards medicine?
Yes, it's very interesting, really. My parents were indentured laborers taken to that time British Guyana to work on the sugar plantations of the British owners. They worked there and they had a limited time of 5 years. So my parents did that and then they had a farm afterwards. And I up on that farm. We grew general produce, fruit, rice, things of that nature. And then I went to primary school because my brother used to go ahead of me because he was about 6 years older. So I just ran away one day from home with him to school. I didn't talk to my parents or anything. And that is how I started my primary school. But after primary school, what did I have to do? I had to earn a living. So the impulse at that time, discussing with my sister and her family, my parents having died by that time, that I should be a goldsmith. So I spent about 3 years learning the goldsmith trade. And I became good at making filigree jewelry, gold, and that sort of
Okay.
thing. After about 3 years, I felt, you have to go and peddle this. It wasn't like in a store. We had to make it, take it to the villages and sell it. So I said, that doesn't seem to be adequate for me. Um, then I was living with my sister and brother-in-law, and my brother-in-law was a master tailor. So he thought, why don't I become a tailor? So that is how I learned to be the tailor. And I did about 3 or 4 years tailoring with him. And then he observed that I like to study. So he said, I should go to high school, or else I would have been a tailor all my life. So he introduced me to high school, supported me, and that is how I became a doctor by chance, or else I was not going to be a doctor at all.
Right.
So after having finished high school, my brother-in-law arranged for me to come to Canada, and I ended up at UBC. I graduated in 1962, and then I practiced medicine for about 42 years. And then while doing the medical practice, I also was interested in religion. I was brought up in the Kabir Pant religion, but then I studied other religions too. And in 1995-96, I did a 13-part series on different religions on Rogers TV. And that was on Facebook and other places. So that is how I came to be what I am now.
Wonderful.
And I am now 91 years old, and I'm retired, of course.
Right.
And then I'm taking life a little easier now.
Wonderful, sir. So 91 years young, but what is the secret to your good health? The concept of mind, body, soul, which we are talking a lot about today, and it's being integrated into medicine also. But during your time, at that time, when you were attracted towards spirituality, towards Kabir Panths, you are now 91, as you said. So tell us a little bit about your secret to good health. What is that?
Well, first of all, we have to know and accept the fact that you are spiritual beings. We are the soul, and the soul is connected with divinity. It cannot be separate. So having that as your background, then you look after your mental health and then physical health. And if you go by the World Health Organization, health is a complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. It doesn't mention anything about spiritual health. And this is what I like to point out to people, that all of medical teachings and practice involve mostly the physical. All the laboratories and drugs and everything are trying to treat the physical, but the mental is a little bit behind that. And there are mental hospitals and treatments and psychiatrists and so on, of course, but not any organized way of teaching people that they are spiritual beings and what spiritual health consists of, how that fundamental part of you can influence everything else in you and to make you an integrated human being. Your body, mind, and spirit. And the mind, of course, has to deal with emotional states, depressions, anxieties, and all the other mental conditions, emotions. And the physical has to do with nutrition, good fresh air, exercise, adequate sleep, rest. And of course, the spiritual one is what needs to be emphasized more and more. And as I have gone through medical training, practice, and studies of the different religions, I find that we have to emphasize we are spiritual beings, and
Right.
let all the others follow.
Okay,
So
wonderful. So it's a
just
complete package what Dr. Das you are talking about, and but many, not many times, but unfortunately, focuses mostly on the physical aspect, and the other aspects are neglected. Nevertheless, we'll go for a break. We'll be back, and then we'll continue with the discussion. And Dr. Garg, because you have read Dr. Das' book also. So after the break, over to you, and let's continue with the discussion and learn from the wisdom of Dr. Das today, which will be very beneficial to all our viewers all over the world. We'll be shortly back.
ਹਰ ਰੰਗ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋ, ਹਰ ਮਾਡਲ, ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਦੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਵੱਖਰੀ ਪਹਿਚਾਣ। ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਹਾਂ, ਸਾਡਾ ਕਰਮ ਹੈ ਅੱਗੇ ਵਧਾਉਣਾ, ਸਫ਼ਰ ਨੂੰ ਸੌਖਾ ਬਣਾਉਣਾ। ਬਸੰਤ ਮੋਟਰਸ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕਰਕੇ।
है जुल्म ढाने का अंदाज भी कितना हंसी, हमारी जान पर बनाई है जब जब उसने अंगड़ाई ली। कभी खामोश रहते हैं, कभी शोर होता है। मोहब्बत में शरारत का मजा कुछ और होता है। दिल को जज्बात का तोहफा, खामोशियों को बात का तोहफा, खूबसूरती में जड़ी नजाकत अदाओं की चांद से मुखड़े को चांद सा तोहफा।
भारत ज्वेलर्स, सच्चे प्यार की चमक जैसा। 5 बिजनेस सेंटर सरी।
ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਰੀ, ਡੈਲਟਾ, ਰਿਚਮੰਡ, ਐਬਸਫੋਰਡ ਜਾਂ ਵੈਂਕੂਵਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਵਾਂ ਘਰ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੋਚ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਰੈਨੋਵੇਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ? ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਤਜਰਬੇਕਾਰ ਬਿਲਡਰ, ਇੱਕ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟਿਵ ਇੰਟੀਰੀਅਰ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਈਨਰ ਦੀ, ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਹੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਗਾਈਡ ਕਰ ਸਕਣ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸੁਪਨੇ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਉਸਾਰ ਸਕਣ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਜਾਂ ਸੰਦੀਪ 6048259295 ਉੱਤੇ।
Once again, welcome back to the program. This program is being brought to you with the support of AMC Insurance. If you're looking for home, auto, travel, business, life or recreational insurance, you can depend upon them because they have 9 branches in the lower mainland and they're open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. onwards till 9 p.m. For more information, call 604-507-6666. Our next sponsor is Agnihotri Immigration. ਜੇਕਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟੈਂਪਰਰੀ ਸਟੇਟਸ PR ਹੋ, ਨਵੇਂ ਹੋ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ, ਅੰਤਰਰਾਸ਼ਟਰੀ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀ ਹੋ, ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਆਉਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਜਾਂ ਸਪਾਂਸਰ ਕਰਨ ਨੇ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਜਾਂ ਗ੍ਰੈਂਡ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ, ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ ਨੀਰਾ ਅਗਨੀਹੋਤਰੀ, ਜੋ ਕਿ 2006 ਤੋਂ ਸਰਟੀਫਾਈਡ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਕੰਸਲਟੈਂਟ ਵਜੋਂ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਓਨੈਸਟ ਤੇ ਰਿਲਾਇਬਲ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇਣ ਦਾ ਵਾਅਦਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਹੋਰ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲਈ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 6045972284 604-597-2284। Today we are talking to Dr. Arun Garg and Dr. Jagessar Das, and it's a great honor to have Dr. Das with us today. With 91 years of experience, he's going to take us on this journey where how we can also understand what life is all about, and especially being from the medical background, how integrative approach can be beneficial. That's what our focus is today. So let's get back to our guests and continue with our discussion. So Dr. Garg, if you could take over and continue our discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I would like to add my sincere congratulations and thanks to Dr. Das for his contribution to practice of medicine. And he's one of us. He practices right in Fraser. His practice was in Delta. And maybe Dr. Das, you could just share for a minute or two how difficult it was in those days. You had to travel and patients were scattered at Royal Columbian, St. Mary's, and Surrey. What was life like? I think our people will love to hear that. Now you hear so much about GP crisis, that crisis, and you were a full-time GP and you did it for 40 years. Let's just share that for a minute before I get into your book a little bit.
Yes, okay, thank you. It was very interesting in those days, of course. I was, of course, new in Canada, facing the climate, and then graduated as a doctor and practicing on Scott Road in Delta at 80th Avenue and Scott Road. And I practiced there for about until 1972. From 1963, that's when I entered practice. And then I had patients in Surrey Memorial, Royal Columbian, and at that time St. Mary's, which is no longer there. And so I had to make ward rounds every day to these 3 hospitals. It was a bit difficult, so I managed, and I did most of my work in Surrey Memorial, of course, but some in Columbian and in St. Mary's. And in those days, I was perhaps the second doctor in Scott Road area. And I was the only Indian doctor at that time. My patients at that time were scattered all over, as you said. And I had patients who were mostly white people, a few Chinese, a few East Indians, and of the Sikh background, occasional Hindus. And so I had a mixed practice. And as you said, I did the whole thing, prenatal, maternity, babies, until adults, old age. And I treated everything as a general practitioner. And so this is how I spent my life. It was a sort of a progression from more difficult times, 3 hospitals, into 1 hospital, into patients coming to a newer clinic, which we built in 1972. And then, of course, my patients became more and more of East Indian origin because more immigration from India occurred in about the 70s, I would say. So my patients were about half or more were Indian patients, and then they spoke Punjabi. And fortunately, I knew a little bit of Hindi, so I was able to get along with them. And a lot of my patients are in Surrey Delta area. They might still remember me, but occasionally I meet some of them in a shopping area or something, or my wife meets them, or my
It's
daughter meets
wonderful.
them.
Yeah.
So,
It's wonderful. I think we have talked on this show, and Harpreet Singh has a special interest in healthcare system. We're talking about GP crisis. We're talking about family practice crisis. There is something to be said and learned from the contribution general practice has made and how integrative it was. And I think maybe there is some learnings here for future as well. I have a feeling we're going to incorporate some of that in a modern way. Now, maybe if I could just change a little bit and refer to your book, Doctors by Chance, Mistake by Choice, a bit of a autobiography of yours. And I was really impressed with it because it is very much like what CINS, the organization I founded, is committed to, and that is concept of integrative thinking and integrative care. And by that we means is the body, the mind, and intellect incorporating uh, uh, yoga and concept of physical body and astral body and causal body, the bodies as described in Ayurveda and dosas. So I was very impressed that you not only uh, kind of learn about it, but you were practicing it and you use it. So maybe if I could take you part of the book where you talk about a relationship between karma and disease and the action and how that affects. And one example you used was a stone, and when somebody throws a stone at you and it hits you, what causes the bruise? So could you just share a little bit insight into it, how you see, how you relate that action and how that health relates to? Is that possible to hear a little bit more about that from you?
yes, um, you being a pathologist and medical person, you will understand probably better what I'm talking about. You're dealing with disease. Of course, I had to practice and deal with disease too. But the idea of what is the cause of disease, in medicine we're taught, okay, there are germs and parasites and viruses autoimmune and all that sort of thing. But one thing medicine doesn't teach us is that how about the law of karma? Don't we accept that as you sow, so also you shall reap? Which in nearly all religions. So isn't disease perhaps an effect of a previous cause? And this is how the law of karma works. Okay, if you have done certain karmas and you deserve some punishment, perhaps one of that punishment is the disease you suffer. And the virus and the bacteria are just the vectors or the agents to fulfill that requirement to make you suffer. It's just like the government lays down the law. You break the law, the policeman comes after you, and you have to endure your punishment. So the divine system works the same way, because God made a law of karma. As you sow, you will also reap. Because every action has an equal and opposite reaction, is a physical law. And what happens then, we are all producing actions, thoughts, words, deeds, emotions, hate, anger, greed, all the other things. All of them must produce some effect. And every cause produces an effect. And every effect is preceded by a cause. And this is how I related them, that the disease agents we're thinking about, the bacteria, etc., are really the agents to fulfill the divine law. Jaise karani, vaise bharani. So we cannot escape that. It's a natural thing.
Right. So, Dr. Das, are you saying that whatever disease we have is the result of our own doing?
Yes, in a way, it's your karmas can bring on disease, but that's not the only thing. I mean, we are living in an environment. There are other people and agents and weather and all these sort of things. They all work together. So that is like an integrated system. We have to fit into this system where we live with the environment and climate and animals and mosquitoes and everything. We're all part of one system. So that's how I look at it.
I think, Harpreet Singh ji, for our viewers, let me bring a little science here, because as a pathologist, as Dr. Das says, my purpose has been how East and West come together and integrative thinking.
Yeah.
So in recent times, like last 20 years, 30 years, as we understand DNA better, we are starting to understand what we call epigenetics and the influence of how we live. Not only how we live, how our forefathers lived. What was our behavior, like the kind of things you were asking. And this is where it gets a little touchy. So it's not a simple answer that you are the cause of everything. What we're really saying, both Dr. Das and I are pointing out, is that the actions with which you are born or the actions you do in your life do influence how your body manifests itself.
Absolutely.
And modern science is calling it epigenetics.
Right. Very true.
So it's not so environment or nature becomes very important. And I think it's a subtle point, and unfortunately over the years people have used it in their power play of influencing people rather than getting to the bottom. So it's not like anybody's fault, but they need to be aware of it. And I think that's what CINS is dedicated to. And I think I'm so glad that Dr. Das brought it out. So that's what I think important for our people, especially people from South Asia or from India, because we are influenced by our history, and our history have always been very integrative. If you look at it, we all, doesn't matter what our faith is, have always respect to nature.
That's true.
We live in harmony and all those things. And so I think we have a real opportunity to incorporate this in a modern way.
Very true.
Dr.
Absolutely.
Das, will that be a fair summation of what you were saying? Will that be fair to summarize that way in terms of karma and epigenetics?
Yes, I think so. Because epigenetics deal with the fact that our lifestyle and environment and our mental attitude and spiritual life, they all affect our health.
Right.
And I think this was epigenetics.
Wonderful. Absolutely.
Sure.
Sir, again, it's time for a break. We'll go for a break. We'll be shortly back. And in the last segment, Dr. Das, we would like to learn from your wisdom, like tension, depression, anxiety is on the rise. People are on the run. From your experience of life and the life you have lived, how to have a healthy, happy life. That's what everybody wants. And though there is a lot of, we are saying improvement in science, improvement in technology. But on the other hand, people now say 50 years before was better than what we have, though we have everything, but still we are not happy. So how to have that contented, happy, healthy life? In the last segment, we'd like to learn from you, and we'll be shortly back after this break. And I would like to once again point, as Dr. Garg and Dr. Das has mentioned, we are talking in general terms. So if you have any ailment, please go and consult your general practitioner. It's a general talk what we are having. So we'll be shortly back.
ਘਰ ਇੱਕ ਐਸੀ ਥਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਹਰ ਕੋਈ ਆਪਣੀ ਨਿੱਜੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦੇ ਸੁਨਹਿਰੀ ਪਲ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖਦਾ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰਿਆ ਜੀਵਨ ਬਤੀਤ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਪੂਰੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਦ ਕਿਸੇ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਨੂੰ ਸਜੇ ਹੋਏ ਘਰ 'ਚ ਬਦਲਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ। ਨਵੇਂ ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫਰੇਮਿੰਗ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ਿੰਗ ਤੱਕ, ਡ੍ਰੇਪਰੀ, ਪੇਂਟਿੰਗਸ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਡੈਕੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਐਸੈਸਰੀਜ਼ ਤੱਕ, ਤੁਸੀਂ SK ਹੋਮ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਈਨਸ ਦੀਆਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸੁਪਨਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਹਕੀਕਤ 'ਚ ਬਦਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਕੰਟੈਕਟ ਕਰੋ ਸੰਦੀਪ ਕੌਰ 6048259295।
ਜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸਮੈਨ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਪਿਆਰ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਕੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ? ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਮੋਟਰਸ ਦੇ ਓਨਰ ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਨੂੰ ਵੇਖ ਕੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਸਮਝ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇੰਟੈਲੀਜੈਂਸ ਦਾ ਉਦਾਹਰਨ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਾਰ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਖ ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਮੋਟਰਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਏ ਨੇ ਸਰੀ ਦਾ ਪਹਿਲਾ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੈਂਟਰ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲੋੜ ਦੇ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੋੜੀਂਦੇ ਟਰੱਕਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਗਾਈਡੈਂਸ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸਪੇਸ, ਮੋਡੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਫਿਊਲ ਐਫੀਸ਼ੀਐਂਸੀ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ ਧਿਆਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੁਖੀ ਬਾਟ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਟਰੱਕਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਟੌਰ।
ਵੈਨਕਾਸਾ ਟਾਈਲ ਅਤੇ ਸਟੋਨ ਸ਼ੋਰੂਮ ਇੱਕ ਐਸੀ ਥਾਂ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਹੋਲਸੇਲ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਹਰ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀਆਂ ਟਾਈਲਸ, ਸਟੋਨ, ਮਾਰਬਲ, ਬੈਕਸਪਲੈਸ਼, ਮੋਜ਼ੇਕ ਆਦਿ ਵਾਜਬ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਟਾਲੀਅਨ, ਸਪੈਨਿਸ਼, ਚਾਈਨੀਜ਼ ਪੋਰਸਲਨ ਜਾਂ ਸਿਰੈਮਿਕ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਜਾਂ ਮਾਰਬਲ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਆਰਡਰ ਤੇ ਜਾਂ ਕਲੀਅਰੈਂਸ ਤੇ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਮਾਲਕ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਇੰਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ, ਜਿਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਕੁਆਲਿਟੀ ਦਾ ਸਮਾਨ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਿੰਗਾਰ ਬਣਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰੋ 130428 ਐਵਨਿਊ ਸਰੀ। ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 604 330 7363 604 330 7363। Once again, welcome back to the program, and let's get back to our discussion. It's a very important talk what we are having with Dr. Arun Garg and Dr. Jagessar Das. So let's get back, August, and continue with our discussion. So Dr. Das, as I was asking you before the break, that people are tense today. People are anxious. Life is just happening. We are not being able to understand what's happening. There's a mental health crisis. There's a physical crisis that we are seeing, obesity, heart attacks, cholesterol. All these things are an issue which everybody is talking about. So what would be your recommendations from your experience as to how we can have a happy, healthy life?
Yes, it is true. A lot of stress, anxiety, depressions, and mental illnesses are still rampant. But what we have to remember, our spiritual teaching says we are Sat Chit Anand. We are existence, eternal existence, consciousness, and bliss. That's essentially our inner nature. And we have to go into that we are indeed a blissful being. That's our nature as soul. And this is divine in nature. But when we do not pay attention to that, and we get preoccupied with our body and the physical life and work and everything else, we forget our essential nature. And that is why we scatter our energies in all directions, and we begin to suffer. But if we are integrated in the sense that, okay, the body needs certain things for its health, food, nutrition, water, fresh air, sleep, etc. The mind needs certain types of nutrition, good thoughts, positive thoughts, love, and etc. If we do that, and spiritually we practice meditation and be in touch with who we really are, and work from that viewpoint that we are spirit, and let that permeate through your whole life. Your thoughts, words, actions should have that basis. The soul does not suffer. It cannot get sick.
Right.
Let's work from that point on. How can we make the rest of our being healthy? And I think we need to take that approach rather than from the physical down to the inner.
Right. Dr. Garg?
Yeah, I was just going to say for our viewers, I know we have talked about many times, but I think coming from an experienced physician with who himself has lived a very healthy life and an example of 91 years of health, I think it'll be worth sharing with him. In his book, he talks about 6 doctors, which has been talked about by Swami Shivanand as well. So maybe, Dr. Das, we could just reaffirm these 6 doctors you have in the book, because I think that will be the take-home message for our viewers. So maybe you could talk about nutrition, food, clean water, fresh air, adequate sleep, exercise, and sunshine, how they are the real doctors.
Yes, yes. Well, I was surprised when I read that from Swami Shivananda's book. And he was a medical doctor, you probably know, but he gave that up and he opened his yoga system. And from that, I learned these don't cost anything except perhaps food. You need nutritious food, as we know in Western life and teachings. Then we need fresh air, fresh water. We need adequate exercise, rest, and we need sunlight. And this is common sense. We partake of them every day. But your nutrition is very important, of course. But I felt I was brought up as a vegetarian, taking some milk products. But later on, even through my medical practice, I began to drift more and more towards veganism, because there's a lot of suffering in the animals to produce milk. And especially if they can't produce milk, they're slaughtered and eaten. So this didn't look right to me. So I became vegan, maybe 10 plus years. And I find that veganism is a very healthy spiritual diet. It does not inflict any creature. It doesn't create any negative karmas. Therefore, we have less karmic debt to pay. And if we pay attention to the diet and fresh air, water, and sleep and exercise and sunlight, then we have all the elements of good health. And we don't necessarily have to always seek somebody to come and cure our illness, because we will have less illness, less medicines, less expenses, and on the whole, you are a better off person. And this is how I look at it myself. And I have lived that kind of life, being a vegan, and I taught yoga and meditation, and counseling to patients, etc. So here I am, 91 years now.
Wonderful. And while you've talked about the diet, Dr. Das, if you could also emphasize upon the importance of positive mindset, how that has an impact on your body.
How what?
The positive mindset, your mind.
Oh, yes, the positive mindset. You know, you can think yourself into sickness. I've known people who cannot live without complaining. Even you can see them doing well. So some people have to complain, and that's a negative mindset. If you complain enough about an illness, you may come down with that illness. The idea is to have a positive mindset. The body knows how to care for itself, provided you give it the proper requirements like nutrition, sleep, etc. The body knows how to repair itself. You break a bone, it knows how to heal. You get a cut, it knows how to heal. So what's lacking? Our mental attitude is perhaps negative, and so we suffer as a consequence. We get depression, we get tension headaches, we get insomnia, can't sleep well, and the host of so many other things happen because we're not accepting the basic principle that our nutrition needs to be balanced without harm to any living beings, and look after the rest of our being, thought, mind, words, everything. That will help us to be a fully integrated human being.
Dr. Garg?
No, thank you very much, Dr. Das. I think you have summarized some of the very basic principles and values we feel for chronic diseases, especially, when we talk about living, people talk about acute care and hospital care. That has to carry on. So that's not what we're talking about. What we're really talking about is health promotion, illness prevention, and living in the community healthy and avoiding chronic diseases. And I think all the things you talked about, they're very, very solid solutions to health. So thank you very much. I can't say enough how pleased I am to have this conversation with you. If you had one advice for our viewers, what will that may be in terms of healthy living?
I would recommend look after the spiritual being, practice meditation and non-harm to other beings. Do not have hate, anger, spite, jealousy, and retribution. All of those things. Get rid of them. Clean your mind. With a clean mind, you can have a healthier body and a healthier life.
Excellent.
It might
Absolutely.
help your viewers to read my book, and this will have some things we're talking about. So it's called, of course, Doctor by Chance, Mystic by Choice. And my thoughts are all in that book.
Excellent.
So it might be helpful. And the book is available through me. It's not in...
and what's your phone number, Dr. Garg, where people can contact you?
604-599-6876.
Great. Dr. Arun Garg and Dr. Das, time is just flying by. I would have loved to continue discussion and learning more from your wisdom, but time doesn't permit me. But whatever we have discussed is really very, very beneficial, and I hope our viewers all over the world will definitely benefit from what we have discussed today. So thank you to both of you for sparing your valuable time. It was a pleasure having you both in the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
ਸੋ ਇਹ ਸਨ ਸਾਡੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਜਗੇਸ਼ਰ ਦਾਸ ਅਤੇ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਅਰੁਣ ਗਰਗ ਅਤੇ ਜੋ ਅੱਜ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਦਾਸ 91 ਈਅਰਸ ਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਜੀਵਨ ਦਾ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਜੋ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਬੜੀਆਂ ਸਿੰਪਲ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੇ ਥੀਸ ਆਰ ਵੈਰੀ ਬੇਸਿਕ ਸਿੰਪਲ ਰੂਲਸ ਆਫ ਲਾਈਫ ਇਫ ਵੀ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਇੰਪਲੀਮੈਂਟਿੰਗ them then physically, mentally, spiritually we'll get elevated, and that's what we all want. We all want to live a happy life. We all want to live a healthy life. But we have to take some concrete steps for that. And for that, as Dr. Das mentioned, his book, Doctor by Chance, Mystic by Choice, you can call him directly at 604-599-6876. 604-599-6876 ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫੋਨ ਵੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ. ਸੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ। ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਮੇਰਾ ਸਾਥ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਮੰਡੇ ਟੂ ਫਰਾਈਡੇ ਸ਼ਾਮ ਦੇ 6 ਵਜੇ ਪੈਸੀਫਿਕ ਸਟੈਂਡਰਡ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਿਕ। The purpose of this program is to educate you, inspire you, and to empower you. And if you also want to be a part of this program, or you know someone who can add to this wisdom, what we talk about, so you're most welcome to contact me through WhatsApp 604-603-7555. Thank you very much for sparing your valuable time. See you soon. Have a great evening. Stay healthy and enjoy yourself.